Bellydancers, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about something very important, which is how to properly and safely stretch the hip muscles, specifically for belly dancing. We're going to go through a few ways to prevent common injuries to the outer hip, the inner thigh, and the hip flexor area, which often get really neglected with people who dance frequently. These areas can get very, very tight. So today we're just going to go through some of my favorite stretches. I'd say these stretches are at the difficulty level medium. I will provide alterations to make it easier or more difficult, but the basic version that we're going to do would be about medium intensity. Kind of aimed towards people who are dancing frequently, but if you plan on dancing frequently, if you have been dancing frequently, and I'm talking several times a week at least, you really, really need to be doing these stretches and probably others as well. So we'll work on more things in the future, but for now we're going to really focus on the hips since they really get beat up in belly dancing. So here we go. Before you get started, I highly recommend if you're on a hard floor, like a hardwood or linoleum, make sure that you have some sort of cushioning for your knees and possibly to support your hips as well. I actually left my dance bag at my studio, my main studio, so I'm improvising today. But I figure you're probably doing this in your living room, at home. You may not have a bunch of fancy equipment, so it'll work out anyway. I've just got 2 towels. You may need at least one just to kind of roll up underneath your knees at times, but 2 will be helpful just in case you need a little extra support here and there. It'll depend on your degree of flexibility. So we're going to get started super basic. I'm sure everybody is familiar with this one. We're going to start with a butterfly pose. Shove those out of the way. Now, a lot of people, when they do their butterfly pose, I see, we're up here, that's fine, but I see this. See where my weight is? It's right on my tailbone. So I don't want you to worry about how open your legs are. That will come with time. What I want you to worry about is the orientation of your pelvis. As much as possible, roll forward to get your weight on your sits bones and off of your tailbone. This is terrible for you no matter what you're doing or how you're sitting. Just stop sitting like this regardless of whether you're stretching or not. Just work on sitting on your pelvis. Your pelvis is shaped like a bowl. Sit on the bottom part of that bowl. These are called sits bones because they're meant to be sat on. So we're going to sit on those sits bones for the rest of the tutorial. Just right off the bat, I wanted to say that. So keeping that in mind, we're using the core muscles to roll the pelvis forward, getting off of our tailbone, and we're going to hold this stretch for a little bit. Now, I am not a fan of static stretch. You could sit here for 15 minutes and probably not really get anywhere or feel anything. So what I want you to do, this is why it's actually called butterfly pose, is we're going to lift up, and then when we press down, squeeze in the outer side of the hip. Squeeze, lift, squeeze, lift. And this is called an active or a kinetic stretch. And this helps us to build actual flexibility, and it helps us to warm up as well. Now, just a note while we're working on this here, if you are not already warm, if you haven't done some light activity, you want to just be super, super gentle with all of these stretches. If you just go through the motions and barely feel any stretch at all, you can use this as a warm-up routine to get your blood flowing. If you're doing these active stretches, this is actually warming up my hips as I'm stretching. However, if you want to really stretch and increase your flexibility, you need to already be warm. Do light aerobic cardio style activity, dance for 20 minutes or so, and then come back to this. And that's how you're really going to see improvement in your actual flexibility. So just keep that in mind. You can adjust this depending on what you're doing. So right now, we're just going for a light stretch, okay? So we're going to do butterfly here, and just do as few as you need. I'm going to turn my computer back on here. There we go. Okay, from butterfly, we're going to bring one leg out, and then we're going to place the opposite leg up onto the leg. You want the ankle just past the knee. Let me just get a weird angle here so you can see better what's happening. And the goal here is to drop the knee to the outside. Again, keeping off of my tailbone. We're not slumping into this stretch. Lifting up and keeping the lower belly tight as well. Notice I'm also keeping my inactive leg flexed because we might as well get a hamstring stretch while we're at it. But we're really focusing on this outer hip right now. Just gently press down, again, working with that active stretch idea. So you can rock forward, you can flex through that muscle we're working with. It's up to you, just move actively through your stretch. Let's go ahead and switch legs. Now, if you don't feel anything in this stretch, don't worry, go through the motions anyway. Look at this one as a warm-up for the next one. So bear with me if you're not feeling anything, and for some of you, this might be extremely challenging. So if you need to support the knee here, turn this way. Keep this foot flexed. This is the active foot. And support this knee. Still, again, keep lifting up, but hold your leg and gently, gently drop it, or gently, gently rock forward. All right? So if this is difficult for you, just go ahead and hang out here, stretch, switch back and forth a couple of times. If that was not difficult for you, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next one. Again, keeping the foot stretched out, not go straight out to the camera. Now we're gonna lift the leg up a little bit. Again, notice I'm not rocking back, I'm not getting on my tailbone. Again, keeping both of my feet flexed. And we're gonna gently, gently, let me go to the front actually now, just ignore my foot. I'm gonna point it so it's not like, ah! And we're gonna go across. Now you may only be able to lift a few inches, that's okay. Then we're gonna try circling. Keep good posture, and we're gonna move slowly. This is a stretch. It's very, very good for your inner hip socket, but it's also very easy to just sort of slightly move the wrong way and feel a pinch all of a sudden, so really move slow. All right, let's reverse that. Now, it's more important to keep the leg straight, so if you need to keep it lower or support it this way in order to keep it straight, that's absolutely fine. That is better than this, where the foot is dropped low. So again, keep that leg as flat as you can. And we're going to circle it around and change directions. Now, if you can't lift it very high, just go back and forth. And keep your abs engaged. Keep everything very active and engaged. All right. Now keep in mind, I'm moving through these stretches quickly, again, because I expect you to actually move at your own pace. This is just taking you through it so that you learn the stretches, and then you can do them on your own time at your own pace. Now the next one, we're going to bring one leg to a 90-degree angle. So we really want to think like one corner of a box, nice and straight. Now the goal is we're going to bring the other leg right on top of that leg. But if this is difficult, to make it easier, bring the ankles closer together. All right, so this turns into more of a diamond shape, and that's okay. I'll show you from the side. See how my ankles are stacked on top of each other, and that allows my hips to drop out a little farther. But more difficult is to place one ankle on top of the other knee. So now knee is over this foot is over this ankle. All right, and once again, think of pulling in the low belly, keeping the spine long, and lean forward from the belly button. So a lot of people, when I say, okay, lean forward, they go here. This is really not doing us any favors. In fact, it's quite counterproductive, because all we're doing is encouraging poor posture and rounding of the spine and rounding of the shoulders, and that's not what we want at all. What we want, especially as dancers, is to have a nice long spine, and you'll feel it's much stronger when you lean forward from the low belly and just gently rock, and you'll feel it pull on that outside. So just rock into that. And I also like to keep my chest lifted, so even as I come forward, my gaze is still up ahead and my neck is nice and neutral. Just gently rocking and hanging out there. And then go ahead and switch sides. I'll come back to the front here so you can see. And just gently coming forward with that. Nice neutral neck, engaged core, and with the rocking too. So I like to move side to side as well, because you'll feel it in this hip, and you'll feel it in that hip, roll it forward a little bit. Just do be cautious and careful with your knee, especially if you have existing knee problems like me. You want to make sure that you're nice and gentle. So if you need to support that knee, or if you need to pop a blanket underneath that knee, that's absolutely fine. Because it's not about the leg, and it's not about push it down and see how far you can get. It's about feeling that productive stretch in the back of the hip where we want it. So gently stretching forward. Again, noticing that both my feet are flexed. You don't have to pull them back super hard, but you will get a better stretch, and it's safer for your knee to have your feet flexed instead of just relaxed here. So very important. If this is just a piece of cake for you, you can also try bringing the foot beyond that side of the top, the bottom leg, and relax it in here. So then the next stretch, hopefully I encourage you to spend quite a lot of time with those first stretches. In fact, I'd recommend that you go back through that sequence all again, butterfly, and then so on, and then come into this stretch. Now this one's very, very difficult, but it's very important. So to get into this, what I have a lot of people do is start from this position where you've got one foot tucked into the hip and one foot over the knee. And then you want to slowly drop this hip down and push this foot here. So if this is a challenge for you, just hang out here. You'll progress through this stretch quickly if you do it frequently. But rolling the weight forward. Now, moving on to make this more difficult, bring that bottom leg out, drop that hip down. You can take a couple tries with it, press, and then slowly distribute your weight down. And then you want to bring that top leg across. Now this really stretches right through here. You may also feel it on the outside of the knee on the bottom leg. And I like to point my feet here, and I'll even give them a little massage while I'm here. Just getting into that arch muscle there. But this is called cow face, which I think is cute. Supposedly this is the face, and these are the floppy ears. So I thought that was cute. So cow face stretch. The great thing about this for belly dancers is that this actually stretches the IT band and the quad area, which gets extraordinarily tight for frequent dancers. If you're taking a class a week, I wouldn't worry very much about your IT bands. You may feel a little soreness after class, in which case you could roll that out really gently, and you're probably fine. But if you're like me and you're dancing many, many times per week, class, rehearsal, shows, and things like that, you absolutely need to do this stretch. And even if you need to work up to it, this seriously is a life-changing stretch and really prevents a lot of the problems in the IT band. All right, so let's unwind that, moving nice and slowly. Even if we're flexible, I always want to be gentle with the body. So again, you can start here, and you can even move through a gentle twist first, or as you go into the stretch, you can also transition from the fire log stretch here just by sliding the feet apart. All right, and again, first work on dropping the hip to open into this. You don't have to go straight into the final pose. You want to ease into it. So you can start up here and just work on dropping that hip and dropping. And then as that feels easier, slide that foot out a little bit and then really settle into it. So once I'm comfortably here, I've got both my hips dropped, I've got my weight evenly on both hips, and I'm able to lean forward a little bit. This one you don't have to lean forward a ton, but just a gentle little rock will help. Now I can't do this stretch perfectly. I do have some knee issues. Doing this stretch perfectly is technically getting the knees directly over each other and the feet evenly spaced apart. But no one is perfect, and that's a goal I'm working on, and I encourage you to do the same. So once you feel comfortable here, you can also work on walking that bottom leg out a little bit more to wherever you feel comfortable. So we've mostly been stretching the outer hip, so we're actually going to move into the hip flexor and iliopsoas area. So this is where you're going to need your mat or your towel, and if you've been on the mat, I encourage you to actually roll up your mat a few times so that it's nice and cushy. We're going to place that cushion under the working leg. I'm going to show you kind of at an angle first. I might have to adjust the camera here. Nah, you don't need to see my face, you just need to see my legs. So we're going to come into a kneeling position here, making sure that the knee is over the ankle. Now, a lot of people, when they go into this stretch, they do this. And you do feel a stretch on the quad here. But this is incorrect. What we want to do is keep everything in alignment. Hip over knee, knee over ankle. And what I'm going to do is pull my tailbone under. And this is going to stretch on the leg over here. So I'm going to turn and show you this way. So don't slide forward. See how now everything is at an angle. Stay vertical, stay nice and square. Also make sure that your hips are not hiking up on this leg. Tuck underneath. So I'm pulling up. And this is the same thing that we do in our dance posture, so this should be familiar to you. You can use the wall or a bar or a couch to balance if you need. You can also turn out the top leg a little bit. And then with everything tucked under, you're going to gently, gently, gently press forward. Again, without actually lunging in. So when you're doing this correctly, you should feel the stretch from about down here all the way up in here. And these are your hip flexors and your psoas. And just gently, gently stretch that. If you'd like a little bit more stretch, you can also take one arm, reach the opposite arm to your forward leg, and stretch at an angle toward it. So I'll show you from the front as well. Again, getting nice and cushion on this knee, making sure that our hips are in alignment with our legs, and get straight onto the camera as much as I can, tucking under and then pressing forward. And then when we stretch to the side, this gives us a little bit of stretch in the iliopsoas muscle. And then let's reverse it on the other side. So I'll go into an angle for you again. And dropping the hip on the forward leg. Both your hip bones should be level. And stretching forward. Just a little bit. Now notice again, so if my tailbone is relaxed back, I can really lunge forward. This is not a lunge, this is a kneel. I'm going to tuck under and then just shift the weight forward. And this is really amazing also for the top of the quadricep, which also gets very, very tight. In fact, my left one is really, really talking to me right now. So we're just going to sort of gently bounce in that, moving through that stretch, and then try that stretch over. And notice how that really lengthens through here. If you need to turn your toes on your forward leg out, that will help with balance a little bit here. And you can go ahead and repeat that stretch if you need to. But we're going to go ahead and keep moving through this little flow for you. I'm going to scooch. I'm going to scooch to the back of the frame here. So we're going to go into lizard pose. So I like to start from coming onto all fours, stepping my leg forward, and relax. Let me go here actually. So I'll show you from both sides. But the goal here, again, move through your pose. Don't expect to just go fully into a stretch. This is morning for me. I'm still quite stiff for the day. Turn at this angle so you can see what my forward leg is doing. Now this leg you want to be, again, over your ankle. And we're just dropping into the hips. So we're going to give a little pulse. If you're really feeling brave, you can come down onto your elbows. I'm not quite there yet, so I'm going to keep working. You can brace that back foot if you need to. You can also drop that forward hip a little bit. Or sorry, this hip. So a little twist. And then square the hips and press forward. You come onto the elbows. You need to make sure that you're nice and straight through your spine. And then you can also work on opening this leg. So let me show you from the other side. Notice I'm keeping my shoulders pressed down and my spine long. You don't want to sit here hunched like that. And if this is difficult, what you can start with instead of coming down is use a wall for a little balance and stay upright and work first on just getting the hips into a nice angle here. So work on that first, come in and out of it. And just stay there. And if you want to try to bring your hands down, then you absolutely can. Alright, so then let's reverse the feet. Oh yeah, you can come into a little hamstring stretch there while we're here. This isn't a hamstring tutorial, this is a hip opening tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead, whoo, nice and tight now, and open, open on the other side. Ooh, really feeling it today. Oh man, that is a good stretch. Notice though, I don't know if you can tell, I can tell, I'm actually more flexible on this side today, but where I'm feeling it is actually on this hip, since I was lunging that hip back before. So again, so you want to work on getting nice and straight through your spine here before you worry about coming down onto your forearms. And my posture isn't 100% perfect here, my hips could really drop a lot more. But guess what? Just stretching for 2 minutes isn't enough to really feel a difference there. If I stretched for a good 15-20 minutes to half hour, I'd probably see a little bit more room for that stretch. But you get the idea, and if you need to try dropping onto the forearms to get your stretch, then go ahead, absolutely. Alright, so we're going to come up and out of that stretch. Alright, we're going to move on. Now you can use your towel for your arms if you need to, because now we're going to go into a mermaid stretch. So I've got weight on both of my hips. I'm going to bring, in this case, my right leg to my knee and my left foot back to my hips. And then I'm going to lean back. Now I actually recommend, even if you are very flexible, to stay here. And then what you want to do is contract in your stomach. So take the hollow out of the back. And this is really going to stretch through the front of the leg and the hip area. So do a few of these first. Arch, and then drop down. Arch, and drop down. And in most cases, for most people, you're going to get more stretch here. Also, you can press with the glute. You're going to get more stretch here than if you actually drop down all the way. But you're more than welcome to do both. I highly recommend both, actually. You'll get a slightly different stretch. And then this is an alteration that you can do also. I'll show you this from different angles, so don't worry if you can't really tell what's happening. You can also reach this arm toward the knee, curving your back a little bit, and bring this arm up and over. That's going to stretch through your obliques on this side, and through your quad and your hip flexors on this side. So let's show that from a different angle. Gotta turn that volume down. So let's try on this side. So now I'm reversing my stretch. Actually, I'll show you on the same leg. So let's try on this side. I'm actually doing the same leg. I want you to go ahead and reverse legs, but I'm doing this so that you can see the same stretch from a different angle. So again, so one leg into the knee and the other back to the hip. And stretching back at first. And then contracting in through the stomach. So as I draw my belly button back toward my spine, then I'm getting a lift and getting a contraction through the forward part of my hip. And then now, let's see, so that angle I was telling you about, if you lean back, you're actually going to twist or bend in your side and bring your arm up and over. Very highly optional for that. So go ahead and reverse directions there, mermaid on both sides. If that is just beyond where you're at right now, then here's a modification. Let's see, we'll try this angle for you. So just going into the leg pose can actually be very challenging for most people. If you sit a lot or if you're very stiff, if you're at a beginner level, maybe just start with this one here. And then if you need just a little bit of work into the flexor area, you can rock up and down. And I'm thinking of rolling my hip forward and then down, forward and down. And that starts to work this area a little bit. And of course you can also really just lean back a very little bit. You don't have to go back onto the elbows at all. And then leaning back and pressing up in the hips will give you that stretch. So that's mainly what the rock is for at first, just to get you used to this feeling here. And try that on both sides. And even if you can lay flat on your back and not feel a thing, this is still a really good warm-up for your hip flexors. It's still a very good thing to do. In fact, even though I was able to do that, partly because I've taken a few tumbles recently and I'm a little injured, I'm actually really feeling that on my inner thigh. I actually kind of tore both of my adductors as I took a spill. Somehow managed to land like with my legs in a W shape with the weight on my inner knee. Very, very uncomfortable. I don't recommend it. Okay, so now we're actually, speaking of the adductors, we're actually going to stretch those adductors. Alright, so now you're going to want to grab your towel again. We're going to place it under one knee. Scooch back here. We're going to bring the leg out to the side. So I'm not perfectly at like 180 degrees to this leg. It is slightly forward. And the other leg, you can't really see my feet. I had to adjust the angle a little bit, but my other leg is just relaxed with the toes going straight back toward the wall. And then we're going to open this leg out a little bit. So see how I'm not directly over my ankle, because we're going to lunge to the side until we are over the ankle. This is how we get a little stretch in the adductor area. So that's your inner thigh. And we're just going to gently pulse into the adductor. Now this one, try tucking the pelvis under. Ooh, yeah. Feel that stretch. Nice and gentle. Good. Again, I'm not great with this stretch today because I got injured, so normally I can get my hips down to a pretty decent level. I'm not doing so hot today. But I still thought I'd make you guys a video, so hopefully you enjoy it. We're just going to gently pulse. Now you can relax the pelvis back a little bit, and the reason that we do that is because it gets a slightly different stretch through the adductor. So just try the different positions of the pelvis, and then we'll repeat on the other side. Starting slow at first. Ooh. Ironically, when I learned this stretch for the first time, I would try it and I thought I was doing it wrong because I just didn't feel anything. But it really depends on what I've been doing. It depends on how I'm feeling. It depends on have I injured myself recently or not. And usually, if you guys know me, you know I'm hurting myself all the time because I'm a huge klutz. Maybe some of you can relate. But, so right now, I am feeling the heck out of this stretch. But when I first learned it, it's like, am I doing this right? I don't feel anything. Why are you guys even doing this stretch? Pointless. So always learn the stretches, try them, and keep them in your back pocket. Just because you don't feel them now doesn't mean that it won't be a saving grace later on. Alright, last one. I saved this one for last because for me it is the most challenging. For others, it's a piece of cake. So really remember that every body is different. I am going to use 2 towels this time, and I'm just going to have it folded over a couple of times, and then I'm going to use another one that is balled up a little bit more. So I've got one that's fairly flat for my knee, and one that is balled up a little bit to support my pelvis. You can also use a block or a pillow or anything like that. Now I'm going to show you 2 things actually. I'm going to show you the way that I learned Pigeon and how that was actually incorrect. So, because a lot of people have learned it that way. So the way I was taught to do Pigeon first was like this, with my leg tucked in. And I don't think there's necessarily anything really wrong with that, but I was then trying so hard to just inch my foot out, and I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't do it. because I have some real issues in my inner hips. I've always struggled with that. So then I learned instead to actually start with the pelvis supported, and I'll show you how I go into that. Kind of awkward to get into it, but what I'm doing here, actually, so this is a supported pigeon here. I've got my lumped up towel underneath my hip and my leg is actually out at 90 degrees. Now I did not stretch prior to this video, so you are seeing a real progression here. This is actually a challenging stretch for me because I don't believe in trying to make myself look better than I am. But notice that I'm starting here, so my top hip is dropping forward really as much as it can at the moment, so I'm quite tight. And my forward leg is actually starting out at 90 degrees. Rather than having my weight on my left hip like this doesn't really stretch anything for me, and it certainly does not target the outer hip, which is what we really want to be after. So what I'll do, because this is probably the hardest stretch for me, what I'll do is I'll actually get up and lift my pips and drop them down. Lift and drop. Lift and drop. And then I work first on lifting my chest and working forward, gaze forward until I start to feel it open a little bit. Now let me show you from the other side. I'll actually switch my legs, but I'm going to stay to the front so that you can see what it looks like from the other side. Okay. So this is supporting underneath my hip. And the towel is supporting my back leg. So this is my real progression. This is about where I start. Granted, I'm very tight, more than usual because I've been moving and not really dancing very much. Oh, not as much as usual anyway. But this is a great example, and I thought I would just be really real with you guys because not everybody is perfect with their stretching all the time. You do get tight, you do get hurt, and that makes it very difficult, and it can be very frustrating. It can feel alienating, like, why can't I do the things I can normally do? So just understand that's where I'm at right now, but with some dedicated stretching I'm going to be just fine. So this is my super modified problematic hip pigeon. It's pretty pathetic, and I know it is, so a lot of you will, I'm sure, be able to do it better than I can right now. But ideally, if you are feeling better in your hips than I am, you'll be feeling this way back in the hip socket. You might be feeling it on the outer side of the leg, which has definitely been giving me problems lately. The perfect pigeon, you would have the forward leg, so this is your thigh bone coming out from your hip socket, would be straight forward with your lower leg at a nice 90-degree angle. Both hip bones, both sits bones on the floor, which is my goal, my one day goal. And then the hips are rolled forward so that that back leg goes straight back. So I'll show you again both of those methods from the front. So the first one, and don't get me wrong, this one can be useful, especially for stretching through the forward part of the leg. So when I'm here, I can come forward, and this is useful also for the next stretch, which would be half king pigeon. But working here and rolling forward, some people, all they will need to do is open that leg, but you'll see, maybe some of you will be here as well, once I open that leg, I cannot drop this right hip. Not yet. It's been a long time coming. But I can lift up and slowly work pressing downward, like so. But be very careful with this stretch. It's easy to hurt yourself. Listen to your body and move slow with it. Okay, so the last stretch for the day, you might just need a little bit of cushion. I probably won't need that much. So we're going to go from that first pigeon I showed you. And then what we're going to do, you may need to use your other towel to loop your foot, or you may need to use a resistance band. This is the easy way to grab it first. So bring your knee forward a little bit and turn it out. Bend that foot and reach for the foot. So this is where I would start. And just gently, very gently, work that leg back to your glute. And you will probably feel anywhere in here. Now if you're here, this is doing nothing for you, go ahead and start here with the hips rolled downward and bring that foot back. Now you can reach for it, and I like to keep my chest forward. Sorry, phone buzz. I like to keep my chest forward. First, what I would do is work on bringing that foot down. All right, but to resist that stretch, this will make a huge difference. Resist your foot, grab it, push against your hand, and release. Press, and release. Press, release, and then press down again, and you may find that you can get it a little bit lower. So then you can start working into this little elbow tuck. And I like both things. So you can come up and reach back. This will actually stretch through your back and your shoulders as well. And it'll set you up for being able to put your head back in the future. Or, and I like to do both, like I said, you can also turn your chest to the side and even reach over with the top hand. All right. Now this isn't about being fancy, it's not about taking pretty Instagram photos, this is about increasing your flexibility. Now let's try on the other side. I'm actually feeling fine without my towels. Can't tell if they're out of the frame or not. Ugh. Alright, so let's try this one first. Just reaching back. This is also easy to get into out of Mermaid. Gently stretching through the quad. That feels easy. You can go ahead and roll your hips forward. This side is actually much better. You'll see the difference in that. That's because of the adductor being hurt on this side. So it's amazing how every muscle in the body actually affects everything else. So even though we're not stretching the adductors in this pose really, the tightness in this muscle really affected my flexibility. I mean, look at the difference there. I feel hardly anything there. You know? So then I'm going to really roll my hips up, contract that leg up, stretching it back. I feel like I need a little bit of padding actually, just a little bit. There we go, much better. So this is more my normal range of motion, reaching it back. And then let's try reaching with both arms and stretching. And you can use this, you can actually drop your foot and stretch through your back, and then you can pull that leg back up. If you want to go crazy, you can try reaching that leg, or the head back toward the leg. But that's more in the back flexibility and less in the hips. That's not what I'm focused on right now. And then we can reach and stretch, where you can drop down and pull that leg in. So you can do this from the lifted up position, or you can drop down onto your legs. This feels very nice. Make sure that you don't compress the neck, all right? Keep everything nice and long. The arms should be moving pretty freely behind your head and not over compressing on your neck. And now it's worth saying that after all of this stretching, you may feel kind of noodly. It may feel quite uncomfortable actually, so what I recommend after doing all these intense stretches is just do a little bit of light open movement and just really try to release all these muscles because they may be retaliating a little bit. They may be a little cranky about what we just put them through. So just do some really light movement, go through a couple of easier stretches after you've done these challenging ones. Or if you are using it as a gentle warm-up before your dance routine, go ahead and work through your dancing. If this is a post-dancing cool-down routine or a flexibility routine, you definitely need to ease into it and then ease out of it and make sure that you don't overstretch. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, please leave me a like and a subscribe because it really helps. Thank you. And then stay tuned for the next video. I'm trying to get one out per week, so definitely if you want to get the next one, hit the subscribe button. Not sure about the posting schedule, but most likely what I'll be doing next week is a breakdown of the figure eight and how to actually make it way bigger and the step that's actually missing from most people's technique. There's a whole step that most dancers completely miss. So if you'd like to find out what that is, stay tuned. Okay, thanks, bye.